The silence of an empty room is heavy, but the silence of 80 empty chairs on your wedding day is a physical weight that crushes the lungs. I stood at the back of the inn at Harbor Glen, clutching a bouquet of trembling hydrangeas, watching dust motes dance in the light where my father should have been standing. They did not just miss the date. My family had decided, collectively, to leave me standing there alone. The fog rolls into Harbor Glen like a heavy blanket, the kind that smells of brine and wet cedar. It is a town that clings to the coastline of Maine with a stubborn grip, a place where the winters are long and the memories are longer. I chose the Harbor Glen Inn for my wedding precisely because it was not grand. It was a weathered, white-shingled structure with creaking floorboards and a view of the Atlantic that felt more honest than beautiful. I wanted honest. My family, the Addams clan, did not do honest. They did spectacular. They did loud arguments at Thanksgiving that ended with shattered crystal, and they did silent treatments that lasted for 3 years over a misunderstood comment at a funeral. I was 32 years old, and I had spent 30 of those years trying to navigate the minefield of their expectations for my wedding to Julian. I wanted a ceasefire. We had kept the guest list ruthless, 80 people total, 40 for him, 40 for me. It was small enough to manage, but large enough to feel like a celebration. I remember standing in the bridal suite the afternoon before the ceremony, running my thumb over the edge of a place card. The cardstock was thick, cream-colored, with Graham Adams written in elegant, looping calligraphy. Julian walked in, closing the door softly behind him. He found me counting the cards for the 3rd time. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. "You are going to wear the ink off those cards, Lillian," he said gently. I placed the card back on the table, aligning it perfectly with the others. "I just want to make sure everyone has a place. I do not want any confusion." Julian turned me around. He had the kind of eyes that saw too much, a warm hazel that usually calmed me, but today they made me feel exposed. "You are waiting for the other shoe to drop," he said. It was not a question. "I am not." I lied. He raised an eyebrow. "You brought 3 tubes of backup mascara. You only do that when you expect to cry, and not the happy kind of crying." I sighed, leaning my forehead against his chest. "I just want tomorrow to be boring. Julian, I want it to be unremarkable. I want my father to give a slightly too long toast, and I want my mother to complain about the floral arrangements, and I want my cousins to get too drunk on the champagne. I want normal dysfunction, not a catastrophe." "We are going to have a beautiful day," Julian said, kissing the top of my head, "even if your Uncle Jerry wears that terrible toupee." I laughed, but the sound was thin. That evening, the air in the inn felt pressurized. The rehearsal dinner had been simple, mostly Julian's family and our mutual friends. My family was arriving the morning of the wedding. That was their stipulation. They claimed the drive from the city was too long to waste a Friday night on, that they had business to attend to. I had accepted it because I accepted everything they gave me. I went back to my room early, needing to hear my father's voice. I sat on the edge of the 4-poster bed, the quilt bunching under my fingers, and dialed his number. It rang 4 times before he picked up. "Graham here." His voice sounded tinny, distant. There was a background noise I could not place, like the hum of a ventilation fan or the rush of highway traffic. "Dad, it is me," I said. There was a pause, a beat too long to be natural. "Lillian, I just wanted to check in. I know the drive is long tomorrow morning. The weather report says the fog might lift by 10, but the roads near the coast can be tricky. I am aware of the roads." "Lillian," he said. He sounded exhausted, not just tired, but drained, as if someone had siphoned the vitality out of him. "Are you okay?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. "You sound strange." "I am fine," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "Listen, we are aiming to leave early, very early." "Okay, the ceremony starts at 1 in the afternoon. Photos are at 11. I know the schedule, he snapped, then immediately softened. I am sorry. There's a lot going on at the office. Dad, surely the office can wait for one day. It is my wedding. I know, he said. His voice dropped to a whisper. Lillian, listen to me closely. I froze. What is it? If anything happens tomorrow, remember I tried. The line went silent for a second. What does that mean? I asked, my heart beginning a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. Dad, what does that mean? If anything happens? I have to go, he said. I will see you tomorrow. He hung up before I could say another word. I stared at the screen, the call duration reading 1 minute and 14 seconds. If anything happens tomorrow, remember I tried. It was the kind of sentence that haunted you. A sentence that belonged in a ransom note. Not a pre-wedding check-in. I barely slept. I lay in the dark, listening to the foghorns moan in the harbor, checking my phone every hour. No texts, no calls, just the time ticking closer to the moment I would become a wife. The morning broke gray and still. The light that filtered through the sheer curtains was the color of dirty dishwater. I sat up, reaching for my phone immediately. It was 7 a.m. There were 3 text messages. The first was from my Aunt Sarah. Something came up. So sorry. Send our love. The second was from my cousin Mike. It is complicated. Can't make it. Ask your mother. The third was from my Uncle Ben. Unforeseen circumstances. Best wishes. I stared at the screen, blinking hard. These were not lengthy apologies. They were brief, clipped, and terrifyingly vague. Ask your mother. I dialed my mother immediately. It rang, and rang, and rang. Then, her voicemail picked up. You have reached Elise Adams. Leave a message. Mom, I said, my voice shaking. I just got a text from Mike and Sarah. They say they are not coming. What is going on? Please call me back. I'm getting my hair done in an hour. Please. I hung up and called my father. Straight to voicemail. I called my brother. David. Straight to voicemail. I called my grandmother. Straight to voicemail. A cold nausea curled in my stomach. This was not a coincidence. One person getting a flat tire is an accident. 2 people getting sick is a coincidence. An entire side of a family sending vague texts at 7 a.m. is a strategy. I got out of bed and paced the small room. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe there was a family emergency. Maybe someone had died. But if someone had died, they would tell me, wouldn't they? They would not say, ask your mother. They would say Grandma had a stroke, or David was in an accident. Ask your mother implied a decision. It implied a narrative. At 8 a.m, the hair and makeup team arrived. They were cheerful, bustling women with rolling cases of supplies. They set up in front of the window, chatting about the humidity and the light. I sat in the chair, staring at my reflection. I looked pale. My eyes were wide, startled. You have beautiful skin, the makeup artist said, applying primer, but you look a little tense. Honey, breathe. It is your big day. I forced a smile. I am just nervous. My phone sat on my lap like a grenade. I watched it. I waited for it to buzz. I waited for my mother to call and say it was all a misunderstanding, that they were in the car, that they were bringing the vintage pearls she had promised I could wear. Nothing. By 10 a.m, the pattern became undeniable. I had sent 20 texts. I had made 15 calls. My messages to my family changed from "Where are you?" to "Is everyone okay?" to "Please just tell me if you are coming." The little indicators that showed a message had been delivered. The small delivered tag stopped appearing for my brother and father. They had turned their phones off, or they had blocked me. At 11, Julian knocked on the door. He was dressed in his tuxedo, looking handsome and sharp, but his face fell when he saw me. I was fully dressed in my gown, a simple silk crepe slip dress that moved like water, but I was clutching the phone with white knuckles. "Lillian?" he asked. "They are not here," I said. My voice sounded flat. "Who? Anyone?" "None of them." Julian frowned, stepping into the room. "What do you mean? Are they stuck in traffic?" There is construction on a 95. I shook my head. No, they are not stuck. They are not coming. Julian, look. I showed him the phone. The chain of unanswered texts. The 3 vague excuses from the morning. Ask your mother. Julian read the text from Mike out loud. He looked up at me, anger flashing in his eyes. Did you ask her? She is not answering. I said, neither is my dad. Julian pulled out his own phone. I am calling your brother. He dialed. He held the phone to his ear. His jaw set tight. After a moment, he lowered it. Voicemail. They are boycotting. I whispered. The word felt sludge-heavy in my mouth. Why? Julian asked. Why would they do that? We had dinner with your parents 2 weeks ago. Everything was fine. Your dad paid for the wine. Your mom was talking about how much she liked the venue. I don't know. I said. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging, but I refused to let them fall. The makeup artist had worked too hard. I remembered my father's voice. If anything happens tomorrow, remember I tried. He knew. I said, my dad knew last night. There was a knock on the door. It was the venue coordinator. A brisk woman named Shelley, who wore a headset and carried a clipboard as if it were a weapon. Lillian, Julian, she said, stepping in. We are about an hour out. The florist is finishing the arch. I just have a quick question about the seating chart. She looked at me, her expression shifting from professional efficiency to mild pity. I hated it. We have 40 chairs set up on the bride's side. Shelley said, but the usher is saying no one has arrived for those seats yet. We usually like to have people seated by 12:45. Should we wait? They are not coming. I said. Shelley blinked. None of them? I do not think so. Shelley looked at her clipboard, tapping a pen against the paper. Okay, well, we have a visual issue then. If one side is full and the other is completely empty, it is going to look unbalanced in the photos. And for the procession. She paused, looking for the right words. Do you want us to release the unused chairs? She asked. I froze. Release the unused chairs. It sounded so sterile, like I was a reservation at a restaurant that had failed to show up, like my family was inventory that had expired. Release them? I repeated. Take them away, she clarified. Rearrange the seating so it is just one central block. Mix everyone together. It will look less stark. I imagined the staff folding up the white wooden chairs, carrying them away, erasing the space where my father should have sat, where my mother should have sat. It felt like admitting defeat. It felt like erasing the evidence of their cruelty. No, I said, Lillian. Julian started gently. Maybe it would be better. No, I said, my voice rising. Leave them. Shelley looked uncomfortable. Are you sure? It is going to look. I do not care how it looks. I said, I want the chairs there. If they do not show up, I want everyone to see that they did not show up. I do not want to hide it. Shelley nodded slowly. Okay, we will leave them. She left the room. Julian took my hands. Lillian, are you sure you want to do this? We can just get married. We do not need them. I know we do not need them, I said, finally letting a single tear track through the perfect foundation. But I need to know why, and I need them to know that I know. The hour before the ceremony was a blur of sickening silence. My phone remained a brick. I watched the guests arrive from the window. Julian's family, his parents, his sisters, his college friends, filled the lawn. They were laughing, hugging, adjusting their ties. On the left side of the aisle, the white chairs sat in perfect, empty rows. They gleamed in the overcast light. They looked like teeth. A knock at the door. It was one of Julian's cousins, a sweet guy named Patrick, who I had only met twice. He poked his head in. Hey, Lillian, he said. You look amazing. Thank you. Patrick, listen, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I heard, well, word is getting around that your folks are delayed. Some of us on the groom's side were thinking, we could fill seats, spread out a bit, just so it does not feel lopsided. He meant well. He was trying to be kind. He was trying to cover the shame. I looked at him, and I forced a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. That is very kind of you. Patrick, but please, stay on Julian's side. I want the seating to remain as it is." He looked confused, but he nodded. "Sure, whatever you want." He left, and I felt the sting of it. I felt grateful for his pity and erased by his offer. Fill seats? As if warm bodies were interchangeable, as if a cousin-in-law could replace a father. The music started. It was a string quartet playing a violin cover of a song I loved. It sounded mournful in the open air. "It is time," Shelley said from the doorway. I walked down the stairs. I walked out onto the porch. The air was cool and damp. The guests turned to look. Julian stood at the altar, looking devastatingly handsome and worried. I stepped onto the grass. Usually, this is the moment where the bride looks at her father. She takes his arm. He squeezes her hand. He whispers that she looks beautiful. I looked to my left. There was no one. My breathing turned shallow. My chest felt like it was wrapped in iron bands. "Walk," I told myself. "Do not stop walking." I started down the aisle. The sound of my heels on the runner was loud. The silence from the left side of the aisle was louder. I could feel the eyes of Julian's family. They were not looking at me with admiration. They were looking with confusion. They were glancing at the 40 empty chairs, then back at me, then back at the chairs. I could hear the whispers. "Where are they? Is this a joke? That is so sad." I kept my chin up. I locked my eyes on Julian. I pretended that the empty chairs were not a gaping wound in the landscape of my life. I pretended that I did not feel the phantom weight of my father's arm that should have been there. I reached the altar. Julian reached out and took my hands. His grip was hard, anchoring me to the earth. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you." I mouthed back. The ceremony proceeded. The officiant, a nice woman from the local town council, faltered once or twice. She skipped the line about who presents this woman to be married. There was no one to ask. We said our vows. I promised to love Julian in sickness and in health. I promised to be his family. As I said the word family, my voice cracked. Just a fracture, hairline and sharp. But everyone heard it. When we turned to walk back down the aisle as husband and wife, I did not look at the empty chairs, but I felt them. They were a judgment. They were 40 silent jurors finding me guilty of something I did not understand. The reception was held in the inn's dining room. The staff had hastily removed the empty tables from my side of the room, condensing the party into half the space. It made the room feel intimate, but it also made it feel like we were huddling for warmth. I drank 3 glasses of champagne very quickly. I danced with Julian. I smiled until my jaw ached. Then, I went to the ladies' room to fix my lipstick. 2 young women, guests of Julian's sister, were washing their hands. They stopped talking abruptly when I walked in. "Hi, Lillian," one said, her voice too high. "Beautiful ceremony." "Thank you," I said. I went into a stall and locked the door. I pulled out my phone. I opened Instagram. I should not have done it. I knew I should not have done it. I searched the location tag for Harbor Glen Inn. There was a photo posted 20 minutes ago. It was taken from the back row of the ceremony seating. It showed me walking down the aisle, a solitary figure in white, flanked by a crowd on the right and a graveyard of empty chairs on the left. The caption read, "Wedding drama? Brideside equals 0? Yikes. Hashtag Harbor Glen, hashtag awkward." It was posted by a distant cousin of Julian's, a teenager named Kyle. The comments were already rolling in. "OMG, what happened? Did she not invite anyone? That is the saddest thing I have ever seen. Run, groom, run." My stomach dropped. It wasn't just a private tragedy anymore. It was public entertainment. The humiliation was spreading locally, faster than I could control. The town was small. People talked. By tomorrow, everyone in Harbor Glen would know Lillian Adams was the girl whose family threw her away. I put the phone in my pocket. I did not fix my lipstick. I walked out of the stall, washed my hands, and went back to the party. I danced. I ate cake. I acted like the happiest woman in Maine. But every time I looked at the door, I expected to see my father bursting in, breathless, apologizing, explaining that the car broke down, that he had been kidnapped, that the world had ended, the door never opened. That night, the honeymoon suite felt too big. Julian had fallen asleep, exhausted by the emotional marathon of managing his family's questions and my fragility. I sat in the bathroom. The floor was cold tile. I was still in my wedding dress. The skirt was pooled around me like a deflated cloud. I stared at my phone. I opened the text thread with my father. I scrolled up to the last message I had sent him. "Dad, please just let me know you are safe." I scrolled up further, looking for his last message to me. The one from yesterday. I wanted to see the timestamp. I wanted to see the proof that we had spoken. But the message was gone. I blinked, scrolling up and down. Graham Adams. "If anything happens tomorrow, remember I tried." It wasn't there. I frowned. I knew he had sent it. Or, wait, no. He had said it. He had said it on the phone. But I had received a text too, hadn't I? A confirmation? My mind was playing tricks on me. I went to my call log. Yesterday, 8:45 p.m., outgoing call, Graham Adams, 1 minute 14 seconds. I clicked on the information icon. Then I went back to the messages. I saw a gap. There was a ghost of a message bubble, a glitch in the interface where something had been deleted. I stared at the empty space on the screen. Someone had accessed his phone. Someone had deleted the record of our conversation? No, that was impossible. Unless he deleted it from his end? But that wouldn't remove it from mine. Unless... I looked closer at the thread. There was a tiny notification at the bottom of the screen, one I had missed in the chaos of the day. Sender revoked message. It was a feature on the new messaging app we used. He, or someone with his phone, had reached into my device from miles away and scrubbed the last words he had given me. Remember I tried. Why would someone delete that? Because it was evidence. I sat on the cold tile, the silence of the bathroom amplifying the sound of my own breathing. I was not just a bride who had been snubbed. I was a daughter who had been erased, and for the first time in 24 hours, the grief began to recede, replaced by something colder, sharper. They didn't just forget. They didn't just disapprove. They were hiding something, and they had used my wedding day to bury it. I stood up, gathering the heavy silk of my dress in my hands. I looked at myself in the mirror. The mascara had held, but the eyes behind it were different. They were not waiting for approval anymore. I was going to find out why 80 chairs were empty, and I was going to make sure that whoever decided to leave them empty would regret it. The morning after my wedding tasted like stale champagne and aspirin. I woke up in the honeymoon suite, a room designed for bliss, white linens, fresh lilies, a view of the harbor that sparkled aggressively in the sun. But I felt like I had woken up in a crime scene. Julian was still asleep next to me, one arm thrown over his eyes to block out the light. His breathing was steady, a rhythm of peace I envied but could not replicate. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. It was a reflex, a muscle memory of hope that maybe, just maybe, I would find a voicemail from my father explaining everything: a heart attack, a kidnapping, a misunderstanding so colossally stupid we would laugh about it in 10 years. Instead, I found an avalanche. My notifications screen was a wall of text messages. But they were not from my father. They were from the aunts, cousins, and second-tier relatives who had left 80 chairs empty the day before. "So worried about you, sweetie. Hope you understand we just couldn't make it work. Thinking of you. Yesterday must have been hard. But family is family, right? XOXO. Heard it was a beautiful ceremony despite the hiccups. Sending love." I sat up, the sheet pooling at my waist, and read them again. The tone was sickeningly uniform. There was no specific apology in any of them. No, I had a flat tire, or the flu hit the house. It was all vague. Managed concern. They were writing to me as if I were a volatile patient they needed to sedate. Not a bride they had publicly humiliated. They were managing optics. They wanted a paper trail of kindness to cover the brutality of their absence. Julian stirred, rolling over and blinking his eyes open. He looked at me, then at the phone in my hand. He sighed, a heavy, weary sound. and sat up to wrap his arms around me. "Don't read them. Lillian," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "I have to." I said, my voice was surprisingly steady. "Look at this. Julian. Look at the timestamps." I showed him the screen. Aunt Sarah. 7:30 in the morning. Cousin Mike. 7:32. Uncle Ben. 7:35. They coordinated the morning after damage control just like they coordinated the boycott. I said. Julian gently took the phone from my hand and placed it face down on the mattress. "Lillian, listen to me. We are married. We did it. We walked down that aisle, and we said the words, and we are husband and wife. That is the victory. If we spend the first day of our marriage dissecting their dysfunction, they win. Let it go. Just for now. Let it go." I looked at him. He was right. Of course. He was kind and sane and healthy. Everything my family was not. He wanted to protect me. He wanted to shield me from the shrapnel. "Okay," I said, "you are right. But I was lying." I got out of bed and went to the bathroom to splash water on my face. When I came back out, Julian was ordering room service, waffles, fruit, coffee. He was trying to normalize the day. While he was on the phone with the kitchen, I grabbed a small notepad and a pen from the hotel desk. I sat in the window seat, knees pulled to my chest, and started writing. I wrote down every name of every person who should have been there. Next to their name, I wrote the excuse they had sent. Aunt Sarah. Something came up. Cousin Mike. It is complicated. Uncle Ben. Unforeseen circumstances. Cousin Jessica. Things are tricky right now. I stared at the list. The language was too similar, complicated, tricky, unforeseen. It was passive voice. It was the language of people who had been given a script. If 40 individual people have 40 individual emergencies, the excuses are messy. One has a dog that ate chocolate. Another has a child with a fever. Another has a car that won't start. Chaos is specific. This was not chaos. This was order. Julian hung up the phone. "Coffee is on the way," he said. I slipped the notepad under my thigh. Perfect. We ate breakfast on the balcony. I forced myself to laugh at his jokes. I ate a waffle I couldn't taste. But the moment Julian went down to the lobby to settle the bill for the reception extras, I was in motion. "I need to run an errand." I texted him. "I forgot my charger in the car. Be right back." I grabbed my keys and went out the side door of the inn. My parents lived in Oakhaven, the next town over, about a 30-minute drive from Harbor Glen. It was a wealthy, quiet suburb of manicured lawns and houses that looked like fortresses. My father, Graham Adams, had bought the house when I was 10. It was a symbol of his success, a sprawling colonial with white pillars and a driveway long enough to intimidate visitors. I drove fast. The fog from yesterday had cleared, leaving the sky a hard, brilliant blue that felt mocking. When I turned onto their street, my heart began to hammer against my ribs. I expected to see cars. I expected to see my uncle's sedan, my brother's truck, a gathering of the clan debriefing after their successful coup. But the driveway was empty. Not just empty of visitors, empty of life. My father's silver sedan was gone. My mother's SUV was gone. I pulled my car to the curb 2 houses down and walked the rest of the way. The silence of the neighborhood was oppressive. A lawnmower buzzed in the distance, but the Adams house was a tomb. The blinds were all drawn tight. The porch light, usually left on by my father who was obsessive about security, was off. I walked up the driveway. There were no tire tracks in the dew. The daily newspaper was still at the end of the drive, wrapped in blue plastic. I went to the front door and rang the bell. I could hear the chime echo inside. Hollow and lonely. I rang it again. I pounded on the wood. "Mom! Dad! Open the door!" Nothing. I stepped back and looked at the house. It didn't look like they had just stepped out for groceries. It looked staged. It looked like a model home that had been wiped clean of fingerprints. The flower pots on the porch, usually overflowing with my mother's prized petunias, were dry and wilting. Lillian? I spun around. Mrs. Gable, the next-door neighbor, was standing by the hedge that separated our properties. She was holding a garden hose, wearing a sun visor and an expression of profound discomfort. "Mrs. Gable," I said, trying to smooth the panic from my voice. "Hi, I'm just looking for my parents." She shifted her weight, looking from me to the empty house. "I haven't seen them today. Honey, do you know where they went? Did they mention a trip?" She turned off the nozzle of the hose. The sudden silence of the water made the air feel thinner. "Lillian, I don't want to get involved. You know how your mother is about privacy. Please," I said. I stepped closer to the hedge. "They missed my wedding yesterday. No one showed up. I am scared something happened to them." Mrs. Gable's face softened. Her eyes widened. "Oh, honey, they missed it?" I assumed they were there. They weren't. I said, "Please, did you see anything?" She looked at the house again, then lowered her voice. "Yesterday morning, early, around 6. That was hours before the ceremony. What happened?" "There was a van," she said. "Not a moving van, a private courier van. Black, no logo. 2 men went inside. I was up making coffee, watching from the kitchen window." "Did they take anything?" "Boxes," Mrs. Gable said. "File boxes, not furniture, just paper." "And your mother?" "She was on the porch. She was shouting." "My mother never shouted. She hissed. She whispered, but she never shouted where the neighbors could hear." "What was she saying?" I asked. Mrs. Gable grimaced. "She was arguing with one of the men. She kept saying, 'The papers aren't ready and we need more time.' And the man, he just kept checking his watch. Then he said something about a deadline. A deadline." "Did my father say anything?" "I didn't see Graham." She said, "I only saw your mother." Then they all got in the cars and left. The courier van followed them. "They followed them?" "Yes. It looked like an escort." "Lillian." A chill went through me that had nothing to do with the coastal breeze. "An escort? Or a guard?" "Thank you. Mrs. Gable," I said. I turned to leave. "Lillian," she called out. I stopped. She looked at me with pity that stung. "You looked beautiful in the pictures online. I am sorry about the empty seats." I nodded, unable to speak, and walked back to my car. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the steering wheel for a full minute before I could start the engine. Files, courier, deadline. This wasn't a family squabble. This was an evacuation. I needed ground under my feet. I needed a place that felt permanent. I drove to St. Jude's. It was the church I had grown up in, the place where I was baptized, where I took my first communion, where I had imagined, foolishly, I would one day get married. Before I realized I wanted the ocean instead of stained glass. I parked in the lot. The church office was open. I walked in, the smell of floor wax and old hymnals hitting me like a physical memory. Mrs. Higgins, the church administrator, was at her desk. She was a woman who had known me since I was 5, a woman who usually greeted me with a hug and a peppermint candy. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She flinched. "Lillian," she said. She stood up, shuffling papers on her desk as if to build a barricade. "I didn't expect to see you. I just wanted to sit in the sanctuary for a minute." I said, "I needed some quiet." "Of course," she said. But she didn't sit back down. She remained standing, her eyes darting to the door. "Mrs. Higgins, is something wrong?" I asked. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Lillian, I am just so confused. When the call came in yesterday—" "What call?" "The cancellation," she said. "For the family pew." I frowned. "What family pew?" "I didn't get married here." "I know," she said. "But your father?" "For 20 years. He has reserved the front left pew for the Sunday service following any major family sacrament. It is a tradition. He pays for the flowers on the altar. He wanted a special prayer said for you and Julian this coming Sunday. I didn't know that." I said, "My father had never mentioned it." "Well," she continued, looking down at her desk, "someone called yesterday morning. A woman. She said she was calling on your behalf. She said you wanted the request canceled. She said you requested privacy, and that the church should not mention your marriage in the bulletin. I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't call. Mrs. Higgins? She looked up, her eyes wide. You didn't? No. Who called? She said it was you. Mrs. Higgins whispered. The caller ID said, Lillian Adams. She sounded upset. She said the wedding was difficult, and that the family was stepping back to support you in your time of distress. My time of distress. They were spinning the narrative before the event had even finished. They were painting me as the broken one, the one who needed privacy, the one who had caused the problem. It wasn't me. I said firmly, Mrs. Higgins, someone impersonated me. She looked horrified. But why? I don't know, I said, but I am going to find out. I left the church before I started screaming. The sanctuary didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like another room where people whispered about me. I drove back to the Harbor Glen Inn. I had one more stop before I returned to Julian. I walked into the front office. The venue manager, a man named Mr. Henderson, looked up from his computer. He looked tired. Dealing with a bride whose family boycotted the wedding was probably not in his job description. Mr. Henderson, I said, I need a favor. Ms. Adams, he said, or Mrs. Vance. Now, how can I help? I need to see the security footage from yesterday morning. Specifically, the delivery entrance and the main parking lot between 7 and 10 in the morning. He frowned. I can't really share security footage without a police report. Mrs. Vance, it is policy. Please, I said. I leaned my hands on his desk. I wasn't pleading anymore. I was negotiating. My family didn't just not show up. Something happened. I need to know if anyone came here yesterday. I need to know if anyone tampered with the setup. He looked at my face. He saw the desperation, but he also saw the resolve. I wasn't going to leave. I can't give you the files, he said quietly, but I can let you look at the monitor for a few minutes while I go check on the laundry delivery. Thank you. He turned the screen toward me and clicked open a file. Then he walked out of the room. I scanned the footage. I fast-forwarded through the gray morning hours. Staff arriving, the florist van, the caterers. Then I saw it. At 8:15 in the morning, a black sedan pulled into the parking lot. It didn't park in a spot. It idled near the loading dock. A man got out. He was wearing a suit, but he didn't look like a guest. He looked like security. He walked up to the side door where the florist, Mrs. Reed, was unloading hydrangeas. He spoke to her. He handed her an envelope. She looked at it, then she looked at her phone. She nodded. The man got back in the car and drove away. I pulled out my phone and took a video of the screen. I waited for Mr. Henderson to return, thanked him, and went straight to the hotel florist shop. Mrs. Reed was there, trimming stems. Mrs. Reed, I said. She jumped. Oh, Lillian, I thought you had left. I need to ask you something. I said, I saw a man speak to you yesterday morning, before the ceremony. Who was he? She turned pale. She put down the shears. Lillian, I was told not to mention it. Who told you? She hesitated. He said he was a friend of your father's. He said there was a change in plans. What change? He said you wanted to cancel the boutonnieres for the father of the bride and the groomsmen on your side. He said your father wasn't coming, and you didn't want the reminder, and you believed him? He had cash. Lillian, he paid for the cancellation fee, and then I got a call. From who? From you, she said. Or, I thought it was you. The number came up as Lillian. You said, please just do what he says. I can't talk right now. I stared at her. The precision of it was terrifying. They had someone on the ground, a bagman handing out cash and envelopes, and someone else, likely my mother or a hired professional, spoofing my number to confirm the orders. They didn't just stay away. They surgically removed themselves from the event. They canceled the boutonnieres so there wouldn't be unused flowers sitting on a table, creating a visual of abandonment. They wanted it to look like a choice, my choice. Did he give you a name? I asked. No, Mrs. Reed said. But the envelope he gave me with the cash? It had a logo on the inside flap. I threw it in the recycling bin. Can I see it? She pointed to the bin in the corner. I dug through the stems and leaves until I found a crumpled white envelope. I smoothed it out. There was no return address, but on the inside security tint, there was a faint, embossed stamp. It wasn't a corporate logo. It was a crest, a bird of prey holding a key. I took the envelope. I walked back to the room. Julian was waiting. He looked worried. "Where have you been?" he asked. "I went to find out why I am an orphan." I said, I sat on the bed and told him everything. The empty house, the courier, the church cancellation, the man in the black sedan. Julian listened, his face growing paler with every word. "Lillian, this isn't family drama. This is something else. This is coordinated." My phone buzzed. I looked down. It was my mother, finally. Elise Adams. "Stop digging. You will hurt people you claim to love." I stared at the words. Stop digging. She knew. She knew I had been to the house. She knew I had been to the church. They were watching me. The emotional blackmail hit me like a slap. You will hurt people you claim to love. She was using my own empathy against me. She was banking on the fact that I was the good daughter, the one who would swallow glass to keep the peace. But I was done swallowing glass. I dialed my father's number again. Ring, ring, ring. It didn't go to voicemail. It just rang, endlessly. I hung up and dialed again. Ring, ring. If he was ignoring me, he would send it to voicemail. If his phone was off, it wouldn't ring at all. This meant the phone was on, active, and somewhere where no one was answering it, or someone was watching it ring. I started to wonder if his absence wasn't a choice. What if the courier van wasn't moving files? What if it was moving him? My mother said, "Stop digging." I typed a reply. Me. I am not digging. I am burying the lie. Tell me where Dad is. She didn't reply. Julian put his hand on my shoulder. "Lillian, we should call the police. If you think they are missing." "And say what?" I asked. "That my parents didn't come to my wedding? That they moved out of their house? They are adults. It isn't illegal to move. It isn't illegal to be an asshole. The police won't do anything without proof of danger." I looked at the crumpled envelope with the bird crest. "I need to know what this symbol is." I said, "Late that night, the moon was high over the harbor. The water looked like black ink. I couldn't sleep. Julian was dozing, but his hand was gripping my arm even in his sleep, as if he thought I might vanish." My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A single, short vibration. I picked it up. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. No name. Area code 202. Washington, D.C. He wasn't allowed to go. Ask about the Graybridge file. I read it 3 times. The words seemed to float on the screen. He wasn't allowed to go. Not he didn't want to go. He wasn't allowed. And then, the Graybridge file. Graybridge. The name sounded familiar, but distant, like a word I had heard in childhood and forgotten. Graybridge. Was it a place? A person? I looked at Julian. I looked at the dark ocean. My mother wanted me to stop. This stranger wanted me to ask. I opened the browser on my phone. I typed Graybridge. The search results loaded. Graybridge Community Hospital, Graybridge Mental Health Facility, Graybridge Historical Society. I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. I typed Graham Adams Graybridge. No results found. I typed Adams Family Graybridge. No results found. I looked back at the text. Ask about the Graybridge file. Ask who? I knew the answer. I had to ask the only people who were trying to keep me silent. I wasn't just a bride anymore. I was a daughter who had just been handed the first piece of the puzzle that had destroyed her wedding. And if my father wasn't allowed to come, it meant he was a prisoner of his choices, of his wife, or of something much, much worse. I screenshotted the message. I saved it to a hidden folder. Then I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, plotting the destruction of the silence they had built around me. They wanted privacy? I was going to give them a spotlight. The drive to Graybridge Community Hospital took 45 minutes, cutting inland away from the coast until the smell of salt air was replaced by the smell of asphalt and pine. I had told Julian I was going to the grocery store. It was the first lie I had told him as his wife, and it tasted like copper in my mouth. But I could not drag him into this. Not yet. Not until I knew if I was chasing a ghost or a monster. Graybridge was a utilitarian brick block of a building, the kind of place designed to be efficient rather than comforting. I parked my car and sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Ask about the Graybridge file. The text message from the night before seemed to burn in my pocket. I walked into the records department. It was a small room with fluorescent lights that hummed like a trapped insect. The woman behind the glass partition was middle-aged, wearing a cardigan that had seen better days. Her name tag read, Sharon. "Can I help you?" she asked, not looking up from her typing. "Yes," I said. I tried to sound authoritative, like the daughter of a man who mattered. "I am looking for the medical records of a patient. Graham Adams." Sharon stopped typing. She looked up, adjusting her glasses. "Are you the patient?" "No," I said. "I am his daughter. Lillian Vance." She sighed, reaching for a clipboard. "Do you have power of attorney? Or a signed release form?" "I have his date of birth," I said, dodging the question. "May 12th, 1964. It is an emergency. We believe there might be a file here that is relevant to his current condition." It was a flimsy lie, but I needed her to type the name. I needed to see if the system recognized him. Sharon pursed her lips. "I cannot give you any details without a release, honey, but I can check if he is in the system." She turned back to her computer. I watched her fingers hit the keys. A D, A, M, S. She hit enter. I watched her face. For a second, her expression was bored. Then, her eyebrows drew together. She leaned closer to the screen. She tapped a few more keys, then hit enter again. Her boredom evaporated, replaced by a sudden, sharp wariness. She cleared the screen quickly. "I am sorry," she said, her voice tight. "We have no such patient listed. I saw you see something." I said, "I leaned into the glass. You found him. What did it say?" "I told you," she said, her voice rising. "No such patient is listed. You need to leave. You are lying." I said, "I saw your face. Is he here? Was he here?" "Ma'am," she said, standing up, "if you do not leave, I will call security." She wasn't just following protocol. She was spooked. A receptionist at a community hospital does not threaten security because a daughter asks about a father. She does it because a flag popped up on that screen, a flag that said, "Do not discuss." I backed away. "Okay, I am leaving." I walked out of the hospital, my heart hammering. No such patient is listed. It was a specific denial. If he had never been there, she would have said, "We have no record of him," but she said listed, as if he was there, but unlisted, as if he was redacted. I needed help. I needed someone who understood how to peel back layers of bureaucracy without getting arrested. I drove back toward Harbor Glen and pulled into the parking lot of Marrow and Finch, a small but aggressive law firm that handled everything from estate planning to corporate litigation. I didn't have an appointment, but I had the desperation of a woman who had been publicly humiliated and was now being gaslighted. I managed to get 15 minutes with an associate named Elias Thorne. He was young, sharp-featured, and looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and caution when I laid the evidence on his desk. The screenshot of the spoofed text to the florist, the photo of the envelope with the bird crest, the deleted text from my father. "This is not just a prank. Mrs. Vance," Elias said, looking at the envelope photo. He adjusted his cuffs. "Identity spoofing to cancel wedding vendors? That requires access to vendor lists, account numbers, and specific timing. This is coordinated." "Can we trace the number?" I asked. "The one that text messaged me about Graybridge?" "We can try," he said, "but if they are sophisticated enough to wipe your father's phone remotely, they are using burners. What interests me is this crest." He tapped the photo of the bird and key. "You do not recognize it?" I asked. "No," he said, "but it looks like a private equity firm or a security consultancy, the kind of people who clean up messes for very wealthy clients." He leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Vance, I have to ask you a difficult question. Is your father involved in anything illegal?" My father is a regional manager for a logistics company. I said, he plays golf. He collects vintage tools. He is boring. Elias looked at me. Boring people do not have security teams scrubbing their digital footprint. Boring people do not have hospital files that make receptionists call security. He picked up a pen. I can send a preservation letter to the phone company regarding your father's data. I can file a petition to unseal the records at Greybridge if we can prove he is incapacitated. But you need to understand something. What? If we start pulling threads, the whole sweater might unravel. If your family went to these lengths to stop him from attending your wedding, they are afraid of something. And fear makes people dangerous. I am already dangerous. I said, I have nothing left to lose. He nodded slowly. I will draft the engagement letter. I left the law office feeling lighter, but the knot in my stomach remained. I needed context. I needed history. I drove to the Harbor Glen Diner. I had sent a text to Mrs. Calloway, an old friend of my parents who had drifted away in recent years. She was the kind of woman who knew where all the bodies were buried because she had brought the casseroles to the funerals. She was sitting in a booth in the back, nursing a cup of coffee. When she saw me, she looked guilty. Lillian, she said, I didn't think you would reach out. You didn't come to the wedding. Patty, I said, sliding into the booth opposite her. I know, she said. She looked down at her coffee. Your mother. She called me. She said it was best if we gave you space. Space? I laughed. A harsh sound. She told you to boycott me. She told us it was for your own good. Patty said, she said Graham was in trouble. What kind of trouble? I leaned across the table. Patty, please. I went to Greybridge today. Patty's head snapped up. You went to the hospital? So you know about it. Patty looked around the diner. It was mid-afternoon, mostly empty, but she lowered her voice to a whisper. It wasn't just a hospital visit. Lillian, it was a scare. Years ago, when you were in college, I stared at her. I didn't know about this. We were told not to talk about it. She said, Graham, he had a breakdown, or that is what Elise called it. He was saying things, crazy things, about the past, about a debt he owed. What kind of debt? I don't know, Patty said. But they took him to Greybridge. He was there for 2 weeks. When he came out, he was different, quieter. And the family? They treated it like a bomb. We all had to tiptoe around Graham. We were told that if we upset him, he might relapse. So the wedding, I said, realizing, my mother thought the wedding would upset him. She thought the stress would break him. Patty said, she said he was fragile. She said if he went to the wedding, he might say something in front of everyone that could not be taken back. Like what? Patty shook her head. Tears were welling in her eyes. I don't know. Lillian, I swear. But there was a legal thing. A sealed incident. A sealed incident. Patty reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her fingers were cold. Your mother loves you, Lillian, but she loves the family name more. She always has. I pulled my hand away. That isn't love. Patty, that is management. I left the diner and got back in my car. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was a picture of a cage. My father wasn't just absent. He was controlled. He had been silenced years ago. And my wedding was just the latest threat to his containment. I needed to see her, the warden. I drove to my parents' house. I didn't expect them to be there. The house had been empty yesterday. But when I turned the corner, I saw my mother's SUV in the driveway. The house looked normal again. The blinds were open. The porch light was off. But the vibe of abandonment was gone. It was a stage set that had been reset for the next act. I parked and walked up the driveway. I didn't knock. I used my key. I walked into the foyer. The house smelled of lemon polish and silence. Mom, I called out. She appeared from the kitchen. She was wearing a beige cashmere sweater and dark slacks. Her hair was perfect. She looked composed, almost serene, as if she hadn't just orchestrated the destruction of my happiness. Lillian, she said. Her voice was smooth. I was wondering when you would come by. "Where is Dad?" I asked. "He is resting," she said. She walked into the living room and sat on the floral sofa, crossing her legs. "He is not up for visitors. I am not a visitor." I said, "I am his daughter." "Where were you yesterday?" "We had an emergency." She said, "A family matter." "I am the family matter," I shouted. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. "I got married yesterday." "Mom, and you were not there. You made sure no one was there." She looked at me with a detached expression. "We were protecting you." "Lillian." "From what?" "From a mistake," she said. She gestured vaguely. "You married a man who will ruin you. Julian is not. He is not one of us." "Give me one reason." I said, "One concrete example of how Julian is bad for me. Does he drink? Does he hit me? Does he steal? He does not understand our world." She said, "What world? The world where you delete my father's texts? The world where you fake cancellations with the florist? The world where you hire security guards to intercept deliveries?" Her eyes narrowed. A flicker of something sharp broke through her calm. "Who told you that?" "I found out." I said, "I know about Graybridge. I know about the file." My mother went very still. She looked around the room. Her eyes darted to the window, then to the hallway, then back to me. It wasn't anger. It was fear. She was checking the perimeter. "You need to stop this." "Lillian," she whispered, "you are acting like a child, and you are acting like a jailer." I said, "I want to see Dad." "You can't." "Why? Is he locked in the basement?" "He is sedated," she snapped. The veneer cracked. "He is sedated because he was becoming erratic, because you and your selfish need for a spectacle pushed him over the edge." My modest wedding at an inn was a spectacle? She stood up. Her hands were shaking. "Just go home. Lillian. Go back to your husband. Leave us alone. If you keep pushing, you are going to bring everything down." I looked at her. Really looked at her. I saw the lines of tension around her mouth. I saw the way her hands twisted together. She wasn't the mastermind. She was terrified. She was holding the line, but she wasn't the one who drew it. "I am not leaving until I see him." I said, "Then you will wait a long time." She said. She turned and walked out of the room, heading up the stairs. "Do not go into his room. The nurse is with him." "Nurse?" I stood alone in the living room. I felt a sudden, overpowering need to find something real, something that belonged to my father that hadn't been filtered through my mother. I went to the garage. It was my father's sanctuary. It smelled of sawdust and oil. A sharp, masculine scent that brought tears to my eyes. His workbench was tidy. Tools hung on pegboards in outlines drawn with black marker. I walked over to his big red tool chest. I ran my hand over the cold metal. When I was a little girl, he used to hide candy from me in the bottom drawer. It was our secret. The sweets are in the wrench drawer. Lily pad. I opened the bottom drawer. It was full of heavy wrenches and sockets. I started pulling them out, clattering them onto the concrete floor. I didn't care about the noise. I needed to see the bottom. I emptied the drawer. The metal bottom was scratched and oily. I pressed on the corners. The bottom panel shifted. I caught my breath. A false bottom. I used a screwdriver to pry it up. Underneath, in the hollow space between the drawer and the casing, there was a small metal box and a key. I took the box out. It was locked, but the key was taped to the lid. My hands were trembling so hard I dropped the key twice before I managed to fit it into the lock. I opened it. Inside was a single envelope. It was old. The paper yellowed and brittle. On the front, in my father's handwriting, were 2 letters. L.A. Lillian Adams. I opened the envelope. It wasn't money. It wasn't a confession of a crime. It was a photocopy of a marriage certificate. State of Massachusetts. Certificate of marriage. Groom. Graham Edward Adams. Bride. Cassandra Marie Hale. Date. June 14th, 1988. I stared at the date. 1988. My parents, Graham and Elise, had always told me they met in 1990 and married in 91. I was born in 94. This certificate was dated years before they supposedly met, and the bride wasn't my mother. Cassandra Marie Hale. I had never heard the name. I looked closer at the document. There was no divorce stamp, no dissolution of marriage notation on the copy. I felt the ground tilt. If my father was married to this woman in '88, what happened to her? Did they divorce? Did she die? And if he was married to her, then everything my mother had told me about their courtship, their love story, the foundation of our family, was a lie. A script. I looked into the box again. There was one other thing, a photograph. It was small, black and white. It showed my father, young and smiling, with his arm around a woman. She was beautiful, with dark, wild hair and eyes that looked like mine. She wasn't my mother. She was holding a baby. I flipped the photo over. Graham, Cass, and the baby, 1989. The baby. I was born in '94. This baby was born in '89. I had a sibling. Or was I the baby? No, the dates didn't work. Unless my age was a lie too? No, that was impossible. I had a birth certificate. Then I had a sibling, a brother or sister who was 5 years older than me, a sibling I had never been told about. The betrayal hit me in layers. It wasn't just that my wedding was ruined. It was that my entire life was a curated exhibit. My memories were unreliable. The stories I had been told at bedtime were fiction. I put the photo and the certificate in my pocket. I put the false bottom back. I put the wrenches back. I walked back into the house. My mother was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water. Her hand was shaking. I walked up to her and slammed the photocopy of the marriage certificate onto the granite island. "Who is Cassandra Hale?" I asked. The glass slipped from my mother's hand. It shattered on the floor, water splashing over her expensive shoes. She stared at the paper. Her face went gray. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "I found it," I said, "in Dad's toolbox. Who is she?" "Mom." "And where is the baby?" My mother looked at me. For a moment, the mask was completely gone. I saw a woman who was exhausted, beaten down by decades of keeping a secret that was too heavy for her. "He chose us," she said. Her voice was a croak. "Us?" I asked. "He chose me." She corrected herself. She looked down at the shattered glass. "He made a mistake, a youthful mistake. He fixed it. We fixed it? Fixed it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You don't fix a person. You don't fix a baby. What did you do?" "We did what we had to do to survive," she screamed. The sudden volume made me jump. "Do you think we wanted this? Do you think we wanted to live like this, looking over our shoulders?" "Who is chasing you?" I asked. "Who is the bird and the key?" She froze. She looked at me with horror. "You know about the crest?" "I saw it on the envelope." I said. My mother closed her eyes. "Run, Lillian," she whispered. "Just run. Take your husband and move to California. Move to Europe. Get away from here." "Why?" "Because if you keep asking, they will take everything, just like they took him." "They took him? You said he was upstairs." She opened her eyes. "They are watching the house. Lillian, they are listening." She pointed to the ceiling, to the smoke detector. I looked up. A small red light blinked steadily. "Get out," she mouthed. I grabbed the certificate from the counter. I backed away. I walked out the front door. I didn't run. I walked. I got in my car. I drove away. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. I drove back to the inn. It was dark now. The road was empty. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. "Dad," I gasped. I fumbled to answer it, swerving slightly on the road. "Dad," I screamed into the phone. "Dad, are you there?" There was silence. "Dad?" One ring, a soft, digital burr. Then, dead air. But the line didn't disconnect. I could hear something. A breathing? No, a presence. Then, a sound. Click, click, click. It was the sound of a recording starting, or a line being patched. "Dad?" I whispered. A voice came through. It wasn't my father. It was a mechanical, synthesized voice, the kind used to mask identity. "The file is incomplete," the voice said. "Look closer at the date." The line went dead. I pulled the car over to the shoulder. I turned on the dome light. I pulled the photocopy out of my pocket. I looked at the date again. June 14th, 1988. I looked at the bottom of the certificate, at the witness signature. The signature was familiar. It was a sprawling, arrogant loop. Witness, Silas Finch. Finch, Marrow and Finch, the law firm I had visited that afternoon. The young associate, Elias Thorne, worked for a partner named Finch. My lawyer's father, or maybe his grandfather, had witnessed my father's secret marriage. I wasn't just fighting my family. I had walked right into the den of the people who helped them bury the truth. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going back to the inn. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to war. Julian and I did not sleep. We spent the first 48 hours of our marriage turning the honeymoon suite into a war room. We pushed the room service cart into the hallway and covered the round dining table with every scrap of paper we could find. Julian had his laptop open, the screen glowing blue in the dim light, while I paced the floor, holding the photocopy of the marriage certificate like it was a map to a foreign country. We stopped guessing. We stopped asking why in the existential sense and started asking who, when, and where. We treated my family not as a group of people I loved, but as a hostile corporation that had executed a hostile takeover of my life. Julian created a timeline on a legal pad. 1988. He said, writing the date in bold ink, Graham Adams marries Cassandra Hale. 1989. I added, my voice steady. A baby is born. We have the photo. 1990. Julian wrote below it, the year your parents claim they met. 1991. The year your parents claim they married. 1994. He said softly, the year you were born. I looked at the gap. The 5 years between the baby in the photo and my own birth date. We have missing years, I said, and we have a witness named Silas Finch, who connects my father's secret past to the law firm that is stonewalling us today. We need the official record, Julian said. You have a photocopy. We need to see if the original still exists, or if it was destroyed. The next morning, we drove to the county clerk's office. It was located in the basement of the courthouse, a room that smelled of old paper and government stagnation. I walked up to the counter. The clerk was a woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a lanyard that read, Margaret, I need a marriage certificate. I said, from 1988, Graham Adams and Cassandra Hale. Margaret sighed and turned to her computer. She typed with agonizing slowness. I watched her fingers. I watched the screen reflected in her glasses. She frowned. That is odd, she muttered. What? I asked, leaning over the counter. She tapped the screen. It is listed here in the index. Volume 400, page 22. But when I try to pull up the digital image, she clicked the mouse. A red box appeared on the screen. It says access denied. She said, why? I asked. Is it a glitch? Margaret looked at me, then back at the screen. She lowered her voice. No, this usually means the physical file has been pulled. Pulled by who? By a judge, she said, or a district attorney. It means the file is sealed. Sealed, I repeated. The word felt like a door slamming in my face. How can a marriage certificate be sealed? It is a public record, not if it is part of a sensitive case, Margaret said. Adoptions, witness protection, severe domestic cases. She looked at me with sudden suspicion. Who are you looking for? My father. I said. Margaret's face closed off. I cannot help you. If the file is sealed, it does not exist as far as this office is concerned. You will have to petition the court. She turned away to grab a stack of papers. I stood there, feeling the frustration boil up in my throat. I turned to leave, defeated. As I reached the door, I felt a hand on my arm. It was a young man, another clerk who had been sitting at a desk in the corner. He looked nervous. He was holding a file folder as a prop, pretending to look at it while he spoke to me out of the side of his mouth. Go to the Family Justice Center, he whispered. What? I asked. The Harbor Glen Family Justice Center, he said, barely moving his lips. It is a nonprofit, legal aid. They handle the cases that fall through the cracks. If there was a sealing order, it was probably related to a protective case. They keep their own archives. Sometimes. Sometimes they forget to purge the intake forms even after the court orders the official files sealed. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. He looked at Margaret, who was busy at the copier. "Because I saw the name you asked for," he said. "Adams. My mom used to work for the courier service in town. She said the Adams account was the one that paid for her retirement, but she was never allowed to talk about what she delivered." He shoved the folder into a cabinet and walked away before I could ask him anything else. The Harbor Glen Family Justice Center was located in a converted strip mall on the edge of town, sandwiched between a discount shoe store and a laundromat. The windows were covered with blinds, and the sign on the door was modest. I walked in alone. Julian waited in the car. He wanted to come in, but I told him I needed to do this part by myself. I needed to see if they would recognize me. The waiting room was painted a soothing, pale yellow, but the scuff marks on the floor and the stack of outdated magazines spoke of underfunding and desperation. A receptionist sat behind a glass partition. "I need to speak to a counselor." I said, "I have information about an old case, a protective order involving Graham Adams." The receptionist didn't blink. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I am his daughter." She looked at me for a long moment, then picked up the phone. She whispered something I couldn't hear. 5 minutes later, a woman came out. She was older, with kind eyes and a weary posture. She wore a cardigan that looked soft and well-loved. "I am Sarah," she said. "Come back." She led me to a small office that smelled of vanilla air freshener and old coffee. We sat down. "You are asking about Graham Adams," she said. It was a statement, not a question. "I found out he was married before." I said, "To a woman named Cassandra. I found out the records are sealed. A clerk told me you might have intake forms." Sarah folded her hands on the desk. "We do not keep official court records. Lillian, we provide support for victims of domestic violence and legal intimidation." "Was my father a victim?" I asked. "Or was he the abuser?" Sarah looked at the closed door, then back at me. "I cannot give you the file. It is against every privacy law we operate under. But I can tell you that we had a client in 1993. "Who?" "I cannot say her name." Sarah said, "But she came to us because she was trying to leave a marriage that had become restrictive." "Restrictive how?" "Financially, emotionally. She was being threatened with the loss of her child if she tried to leave the state." "Her child," I whispered. "Was the child's name Lillian?" Sarah didn't answer. She just looked at me with a profound sadness. "There was a protective order filed," she said carefully, "but it was not against Graham." I frowned. "It wasn't?" "No," Sarah said. "The protective order was filed by Graham, against the family of his second wife." "His second wife? Elise? My mother? He filed a protective order against my mother?" I asked. The room spinning. "Against the Hale family," Sarah corrected. "And the Adams family. It was a joint filing. He was trying to protect himself and his first family from the people who wanted to absorb them." "Absorb them?" "Lillian," Sarah said, leaning forward. "Sealed does not mean harmless. Sealed means buried. If those files were pulled, it is because someone with a lot of power did not want the narrative to exist. You are walking into a machinery that has been running for 30 years. "But what happened to the first wife?" I asked. "What happened to Cassandra?" Sarah stood up. "That is all I can say. Please, for your own safety, stop asking questions in places that have paper trails." I walked out of the center feeling like I was made of glass. My father hadn't been the villain. He had been the one trying to get away. He had tried to use the law to protect Cassandra and the baby, and he had failed. I went back to the car. Julian looked at my face and started the engine without a word. We drove back to the inn. I felt a numbness spreading through my limbs, a cold anesthesia that made the world feel distant. I walked into the suite and went straight to the kitchenette. There were dishes in the sink from our breakfast. I turned on the water. I picked up a sponge. I started scrubbing a coffee mug. "Lillian?" Julian said from the doorway. I kept scrubbing. The water was scalding hot, turning my hands red. But I didn't turn it down. I needed the heat. I needed to feel something that wasn't the gaping hole in my chest where my history used to be. "Talk to me," Julian said. "There is nothing to say." I said, my voice flat. "My father tried to protect us. My mother, or the people she works for, crushed him. They sealed the file. They erased the other woman. They erased the baby. I scrubbed harder. The sponge tore against the ceramic. And I am the prize." I said, "I am the thing they kept. I am the trophy they won in the lawsuit." "Lillian." "Stop," Julian said. He came over and turned off the water. He took the mug from my hands. "You are not a trophy. You are my wife. You are a person. I am a lie." "Julian!" I shouted, the numbness cracking. Every birthday, every Christmas, every story about how they met at a mixer in Boston, it was all a script. I am living in a play, and I am the only one who didn't know the lines. He held me while I shook. I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry. I was vibrating with a rage that felt ancient, inherited. I pulled away from him. "I need to know why no one came." I said, "I need to know the mechanism." I picked up my phone. I scrolled through the list of relatives who had sent the vague, copy-pasted excuses. I stopped at Cousin Mike. He was weak. He had always been the one who couldn't keep a secret, the one who spilled the beans about surprise parties. I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Lillian. Look, I really can't talk right now." "Cut the crap." "Mike," I said. My voice was ice. "I am not calling for an apology. I am calling to tell you that I just left the Family Justice Center. I know about the protective order from 1993. There was silence on the line. A heavy, terrified silence. "I didn't know anything about that." Mike stammered. "Lillian, please." "I am going to the police." "Mike, I lied. I am going to report a missing person. I am going to tell them that the entire Adams family is involved in a conspiracy to conceal the whereabouts of Graham Adams. And when they start subpoenaing phone records, your texts are going to be right at the top." "No," Mike shouted. "Lillian, don't. You can't involve the police. Then tell me the truth." I said, "Why was the wedding boycotted? Who made the call?" "It was Aunt Elise." Mike whispered. "She called a family meeting. On Zoom. 3 days before the wedding. And said what?" She said that Graham had relapsed, that he was in a legal dispute regarding his estate. She said that there was a dormant lawsuit involving a third party. What third party? She didn't say. She just said that if any of us attended the wedding, we would be seen as aligning with you and Graham against the family trust. She said the opposing counsel would add us to the lawsuit. She threatened to sue you? She threatened to bankrupt us. Lillian, she said the legal fees alone would destroy anyone who showed up. She said the family wealth was at risk. You know how Dad is about money. He panicked. Everyone panicked. So you sold me out for your portfolio." I said, "It wasn't like that." Mike said, "We thought we were saving the family." She said if we just stayed away, the threat would pass. She said it was for your protection, too. That if the wedding was small and quiet, the enemy wouldn't notice. The enemy. I repeated. I hung up. I stood in the center of the room, looking at Julian. It was money. I said, "It is always money." She told them they would be sued if they came. She weaponized their greed and their fear. She didn't have to lock them in a room. She just had to threaten their bank accounts. Julian shook his head. "That is efficient and sociopathic." My phone chimed. I looked down. It was a text. Unknown number. "Oh, your father tried to leave. Someone stopped him. Check the storage unit on Baynard Road." I showed the phone to Julian. Baynard Road. He said, "That is the self-storage place out by the highway. We are going." I said, We drove to the storage facility. It was a bleak row of corrugated metal buildings surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. The sun was setting, casting long, jagged shadows across the asphalt. We pulled up to the keypad at the gate. "Do we have a code?" Julian asked. "No," I said. I looked at the text again. Check the storage unit. I got out of the car and walked to the main office. The sign said, "Open until 6 p.m." It was 5:50. I walked inside. A man with a grease-stained shirt was sitting behind the counter, watching a small TV. "Can I help you?" he asked, not looking away from the screen. "I lost my key." I said, "Unit 402. I made up the number. I was fishing." "Name?" he asked. "Elise Adams." I said. He typed into his computer. "No unit for an Adams. Try Blue Heron." I said. It was the name of a shell company my mother used for her consulting business. I had seen it on tax forms years ago. He typed, "Nope." I closed my eyes. Think. Ask about the Graybridge file. The text message. The person sending these texts knew everything. Try. Cassandra Hale. I said. The man stopped typing. He looked at me. "You said your name was Adams. I am her daughter." I said. She passed away. I am trying to clear out her things." He looked at the screen. Unit B17. Cassandra Hale. Rent paid up through next year. Auto pay. That is the one. I said, "I need to see ID." He said, "I don't have her ID." I said, "I told you. She died." "Then I can't let you in." I leaned over the counter. "Listen to me. My father is missing. This storage unit might be the only way I find him. I am not asking you to break the law. I am asking you to let me cut a lock off a unit that hasn't been opened in 20 years. He looked at me. He saw the desperation. He saw the wedding band on my finger that was only 2 days old. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a pair of bolt cutters. "I ain't cutting it," he said, "but if you lose your key, you are allowed to cut your own lock. I'll just look the other way for 10 minutes. Thank you." Julian and I walked to Unit B17. It was an outdoor unit. The orange door faded by the sun. I took the bolt cutters. They were heavy. I fit the jaws around the padlock. I squeezed. The metal snapped with a loud crack. I pulled the lock off and threw it on the ground. I grabbed the handle and rolled the door up. It groaned, a screech of metal on metal that sounded like a scream. The unit was small. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light from the setting sun. It wasn't full of furniture. It was full of boxes. Bankers' boxes. Dozens of them. Stacked floor to ceiling. I stepped inside. The air smelled of stale paper and mildew. I pulled the top box off the nearest stack. It was labeled Photos 1989 to 1992. I tore the lid off. It was filled with photo albums, not the neat, leather-bound ones my mother kept in the living room. These were cheap. Plastic albums. I opened one. The first page showed a woman sitting on a porch swing. She had dark, curly hair and a laugh that seemed to jump off the glossy paper. She was holding a baby. The baby was wearing a yellow onesie with a duck on it. I froze. I knew that onesie. I had seen it in my own baby book, the one my mother, Elise, kept. But in Elise's version, the photo was cropped. It showed only the baby, cut into a neat oval. Here, the photo was whole. The woman holding me wasn't Elise. It was Cassandra. I turned the pages. Me and Cassandra at the beach. Me and Cassandra blowing out candles on a cake. Me and Cassandra sleeping in a hammock. Graham, my father, standing behind Cassandra, his arms wrapped around her, looking happier than I had ever seen him. These weren't just photos of a secret family. These were photos of my family. The first 3 years of my life. I wasn't born in 94. I was the baby in 89. My entire age was a lie. They had de-aged me. They had stolen 5 years of my life to make the timeline fit Elise's narrative, to make it look like I was born after they were married. I felt sick, physically violent. Julian was going through another box. Lillian. "Look at this." He held up a piece of paper. It was a handwritten note. The ink was faded, but the handwriting was unmistakable. It was my father's blocky. All caps script. To Lillian. My hands shook as I took it. "If you are reading this, I failed. I failed to tell you the truth in time. I failed to get us out. I wanted you to know that you were born out of love. Real love, not an arrangement. Your mother, your real mother, Cassie, didn't leave you. She didn't die. They took you. They used the lawyers. They used the money. They argued that she was unfit because she didn't have the means to protect you from the public interest of the family name. They bought the judge. They bought the custody evaluation. I stayed because it was the only way I could be in your life. Elise agreed to raise you as her own, on the condition that we never spoke of Cassie again, on the condition that we rewrote the history. I agreed because I was a coward, and because I thought a father present in a lie was better than a father absent in the truth. I was wrong. I am sorry. I love you. Don't let them decide who you are. Dad. I lowered the paper. I looked at the wall of boxes. This wasn't a storage unit. It was a mausoleum. It was the graveyard of the life I had actually lived, the mother I had actually known, the father who had actually loved me. They took me. They took me from her, and they made my father watch while they painted over the canvas of our lives with their own beige, respectable colors. Lillian, Julian said softly. I looked at him. My mother isn't my mother, I said. My age isn't my age. My birthday isn't my birthday. I looked at the date on the note. It was written 2 days ago. He wrote this 2 days ago. I said, he came here. He was planning to give this to me. Your father tried to leave. Someone stopped him. He was coming to the wedding. I said, realizing the horror of it. He was coming to bring me here. He was coming to tell me the truth. And they stopped him. I grabbed the note. I grabbed the album. We are leaving. I said. Where are we going? Julian asked. To find the woman in this picture. I said, because if my father is right, and she didn't die, then somewhere out there, I have a mother who has been waiting for me for 30 years, and I have a stepmother who is going to wish she had killed me instead of just lying to me. The drive back to my parents' house, my mother's house, felt less like a commute and more like a tactical approach. I had the photo album on my lap. The plastic cover was cold against my palms. Julian drove in silence, his hands tight on the wheel, respecting the volatility of the air inside the car. We were carrying a nuclear device, and we were heading straight for ground zero. I did not use my key this time. I rang the bell. I rang it until the chime echoed incessantly inside, a demand that could not be ignored. My mother opened the door. She looked impeccable, as always, but her eyes were red-rimmed. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost more than the storage unit rental fee. When she saw the album in my hands, her gaze didn't flicker with confusion. It flickered with resignation. She stepped back, allowing us to enter. We walked into the living room. I placed the album on the coffee table, right on top of her carefully arranged stack of architectural digests. I opened it to the page with the yellow duck onesie. Explain this, I said. My voice was not loud. It was the terrifyingly calm voice of someone who has nothing left to lose. Elise looked at the photo. She didn't touch it. She clasped her hands in front of her. I told you to stop digging. Lillian, she said softly, that is not an explanation. I said, that is a command. I want an explanation. Who is the woman holding me? Why am I 5 years older than you told me I was? Why does my father have a secret life that is sitting in a storage unit on Baynard Road? Elise sighed, a long, shuddering exhale that seemed to deflate her posture. She walked to the window and looked out at the manicured lawn. Her name was Cassandra. She said, Was? I asked. Is she dead? To us. She is, Elise said. She turned back to face me. She was your father's first wife. A mistake. A youthful, impulsive mistake made by a man who didn't understand the weight of his own name. And me? I asked. Was I a mistake? Elise's expression hardened. You were a consequence. Lillian. A consequence of a situation that got out of hand. She walked over to the table and looked down at the baby in the photo. I raised you, she said fiercely. I am the one who sat up with you when you had chickenpox. I am the one who taught you how to walk in heels. I am the one who edited your college essays. That woman? She gave birth to you. Biology is an accident. Motherhood is a choice. I chose you. You stole me, I shouted. You lied to me for 30 years. You made me believe I was born in 1994 so the timeline would fit your marriage. You erased 5 years of my existence. We protected you, she snapped. Do you think we did it for fun? Do you think it was easy keeping track of the lies? We did it because we had to. Why? Julian asked. His voice was deep and steady, cutting through the hysteria. Why did you have to? Elise looked at him with disdain, but she answered, because that woman and her trashy, grasping family were going to destroy us. She began to pace the room. Graham was young, she said. He married beneath him. When he realized it, when he wanted to leave, they turned on him. They used you as leverage. They threatened to go to the press. They threatened to expose certain indiscretions. What indiscretions? I asked. Financial ones, she said, waving a hand. Matters related to the family trust. Things that would have ruined your grandfather. They held the family name hostage. We had to make a deal. We paid them. We paid them a fortune to sign away their rights, to seal the records, and to disappear. And part of the deal was erasing me? I asked. Part of the deal was a clean break. Elise said, we could not have you growing up knowing about them. They were toxic. Lillian, they would have come back for more money. They would have poisoned you against us. We had to create a new narrative, a safe narrative. I stared at her. She believed it. Or she had told herself the story so many times that it had calcified into truth. So the wedding. I said, why destroy my wedding? Elise stopped pacing. She looked at me with genuine fear. Because a wedding is a public record, she whispered. We saw the guest list. We saw the social media posts. You were tagging locations. You were making it a spectacle. We were terrified that if the story got too much attention, they would see it. The old family, or someone who knew. So you broke my heart to save your reputation. I said, I saved your inheritance, she cried. If that scandal came out, if the terms of the settlement were breached, we could lose everything, the house, the trust, everything. I looked at her, and I felt a sudden, violent separation. I separated the gratitude I had felt for her parenting from the consent I had never given to be her prop. I do not care about the money. Mom, I said, I care that my father is missing. I care that I have a mother out there who I do not know. Elise stepped forward, reaching for my hand. Lillian, please, listen to me. That woman does not want you. She took the money. She sold you. If you go find her, you are just opening a door to pain. I pulled my hand away. I am going to find her, I said, and I'm going to ask her myself how much I cost. I grabbed the album. Come on, Julian. We left the house. Elise stood in the doorway, shouting after us. You are making a mistake. You are going to ruin us all. I didn't look back. I had the name, Cassandra Hale. And thanks to the storage unit rental agreement I had found in one of the boxes, I had an address. It was in a town called Oakhurst, about an hour north, not far. Close enough to haunt someone, but far enough to be ignored. We drove north. The landscape changed from the manicured suburbs of the coast to the grittier, working-class towns of the interior. We passed strip malls and auto body shops. The address led us to a small, yellow ranch house at the end of a cul-de-sac. The lawn was overgrown, but there were flower pots on the porch. Geraniums, bright red and defiant against the peeling paint. I sat in the car for a long time. Are you ready? Julian asked. No, I said, but I am going. I got out. I walked up the cracked concrete path. My heart was beating a rhythm against my ribs that felt like a bird trying to escape a cage. I knocked on the door. A dog barked inside. Then, footsteps. The door opened. The woman standing there was older than the woman in the photos. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, and lines were etched deep around her mouth. But the eyes were the same. They were my eyes. She looked at me. She didn't speak. She didn't gasp. She just held onto the doorframe as if the earth had suddenly shifted beneath her feet. Lillian, she whispered. She knew me. She hadn't seen me in 30 years. But she knew me. Hi, I said. My voice broke. She opened the door wider. Come in, please. The house was modest, cluttered with books and knickknacks. It smelled of cinnamon and old paper. She led us to the kitchen table. "I am sorry about the mess," she said, wiping crumbs off the table with her sleeve. I didn't expect company. You know who I am," I said. She sat down heavily in a wooden chair. "I have a Google alert for your name," she said. "I have had it for 10 years. I saw the wedding announcement. I saw the posts about the empty seats." "You saw?" I asked. She nodded. "I wanted to go. God, I wanted to go. But I couldn't." "Why?" I asked. "My mother, Elise, says you sold me. She says you took a payoff and signed away your rights because you were blackmailing the family." Cassandra let out a laugh that sounded like a sob. "Is that what she told you? That I was a blackmailer?" She looked at Julian, then back at me. "Graham and I were happy. Lillian," she said, "we were poor, but we were happy. He was trying to break away from his father's business. He wanted to be a carpenter. We lived in a little apartment in the city. When you were born, he was so proud. Then what happened? Then his father got sick," she said, "and the family, the Adams empire, needed an heir. They needed Graham to come back and take over. But they didn't want him to bring his waitress wife and his illegitimate lifestyle with him, so they paid you off?" "No," she said firmly. "They destroyed us. They found out about a debt my brother owed, a stupid gambling debt. They bought the debt. They threatened to put him in jail. Then they went after Graham. They threatened to expose a business mistake he had made, something technical, but illegal enough to send him to prison for 10 years. She leaned forward. They gave him a choice. Lillian, come back to the fold. Marry the woman they had chosen, Elise, whose father was a senator, and secure the family alliances. Or go to prison and watch me and my brother get crushed by lawsuits we couldn't afford to fight." "Elise was already in the picture?" I asked. "Elise was always in the picture," Cassandra said. "She and Graham had dated in college. She was the one the family wanted. When Graham married me, she waited, and when the pressure was applied, she was there to offer him a lifeboat." "And the overlapping?" I asked. Cassandra looked down at her hands. "Graham didn't leave me right away. For a year. He tried to juggle it. He was married to me, but he was being paraded around with Elise at galas. It was humiliating, but he was trying to find a way out. He was trying to move money, to get us safe passage, but he failed." "He didn't fail," she said softly. "He surrendered. They filed for custody of you. They had judges in their pockets. They argued I was unstable. They had photos of my brother's arrest, which they orchestrated. They told Graham that if he didn't agree to the divorce and the sealing of the records, they would take you and put you in foster care until the trial was over." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "He signed the papers to keep you out of the system. Lillian, he gave you to Elise because he knew she would give you a comfortable life. He sacrificed his happiness to buy your safety, and I had to let you go, because fighting them meant destroying the only father you had." I sat there, the story settling over me like a heavy blanket. It wasn't greed. It was a siege. My father hadn't abandoned me. He had been a prisoner of war. And Cassandra hadn't sold me. She had been the casualty. "He tried to tell me," I said. "I found a note. He tried to come to the wedding." Cassandra nodded. "He called me last week. It was the first time we had spoken in 20 years. He said he couldn't do it anymore. He said you were getting married, and he couldn't stand there and lie to you on the most honest day of your life. He said he was going to bring you to me." "He was coming here?" "Yes. We were going to meet. He was going to bring the files, the proof, and then he disappeared." I said. Cassandra reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was rough, warm. "They have him. Lillian, the firm, Marrow and Finch, they have always been the enforcers. If he tried to break the agreement, they would have activated the clauses. They would have taken everything he has left." I looked at this woman, my mother, and I saw the wreckage of a life that had been sacrificed for my protection. "I am sorry," I whispered. "I didn't know." "I know you didn't," she said. That was the point. We stayed for an hour. It wasn't a reunion of joy. It was a sharing of scars. She showed me more photos. She told me I had liked strawberries and hated socks. She gave me facts, small and precious, that filled the holes in my memory. When we left, she stood on the porch. "Be careful, Lillian," she said. "You are fighting people who think they own the truth." I hugged her. It felt strange, like hugging a stranger who smelled like home. "I will come back," I promised. "I hope so," she said. The drive back to the inn was quiet. The sun had set, and the headlights cut through the darkness. Julian broke the silence. "Do you believe her?" he asked. "I believe her more than I believe Elise," I said. "Her story has holes, but they are the kind of holes that come from trauma, not fabrication. Elise's story was too polished." Julian reached over and took my hand. "So here's the question. Lillian," he said gently, "do you want the truth? Or do you want your mother's version of peace? What do you mean? If you pursue this, if you expose them, you lose Elise, you lose the family you knew, you lose the financial safety net. You destroy the reputation of the Adams name. You might even send your father to prison if the old indiscretions are real. And if I stop? If you stop, you go back to the brunch parties. You go back to the holidays. You pretend this never happened. You get to keep your father, in a way, but you live with the lie." I looked out the window at the passing trees. "I can't go back," I said. "I can't unknow that I have a mother named Cassandra. I can't unread that note from my dad. But it feels like losing, doesn't it?" Julian asked. "Yes," I said. "Both options feel like losing." When we got back to the inn, the night manager handed me a thick envelope. "This arrived by courier an hour ago," he said. I took it. It was heavy. The return address was embossed. Marrow, Finch Associates. I took it upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed and tore it open. It was a cease and desist letter. To Mrs. Lillian Vance. "We represent the interests of the Adams Family Trust and associated entities. It has come to our attention that you are in possession of confidential documents that are the property of the trust. Furthermore, you have engaged in harassment of private individuals, including Ms. Cassandra Hale. You are hereby ordered to cease all contact with Ms. Hale. You are ordered to return any and all documents removed from the property at 402 Baynard Road. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action, including but not limited to a civil suit for defamation and theft of proprietary information. We also remind you of the non-disclosure agreement signed by your father, Graham Adams, which stipulates that any breach of confidentiality by him or his immediate beneficiaries will result in the immediate forfeiture of all assets and the reactivation of the suspended indictment in case number 89-204. I dropped the letter. They were threatening to indict my father, the business mistake Cassandra had mentioned. It was still hanging over his head like a guillotine blade, kept suspended only by his silence, and they were calling me a beneficiary. They were saying I was bound by his contract. This wasn't protection. This was a hostage situation. I looked at Julian. They are threatening to put him in jail if I don't shut up. I said. Julian read the letter. He looked pale. "Lillian, these people are serious. This isn't a family spat. This is corporate warfare." I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the harbor. The boats were bobbing in the dark water, tethered to their moorings. I recognized the pattern. It was the same pattern they had used on Cassandra. Fear, money, threats. They managed people. They pruned the messy branches to keep the family tree looking perfect. But I wasn't a branch. I was the root rot. I am not going to be managed. I said, "Lillian, no, Julian, I am done. They want a war? I will give them a war. But I am not going to fight it in a courtroom where they own the judge." I picked up the letter and ripped it in half. I am going to find my father, and I am going to ask him if he wants to be free. My phone buzzed. I looked at it. "Dad." I grabbed it. I didn't scream this time. I answered it and put it on speaker. "Dad?" I said. There was a pause. Then, a voice. It was him. Hoarse, hurried, breathless. "Lillian," he rasped. "Listen to me. I don't have much time." "Where are you?" I asked. I am safe for the moment," he said. "But they know. They know you found the storage unit. They know you went to Cassandra's." "Dad, I got a letter. From Finch. They are threatening to indict you." "I know," he said. "They are squeezing. They are scared." "Lillian, you scared them." "Good," I said. "Tell me where you are. I will come get you." "No," he hissed. "Do not come to me. Do not bring Julian. Do not trust anyone who says they are helping you. Not the police, not the lawyers, even the innkeeper. They have reach everywhere." "Then what do I do?" "Meet me," he said. "Alone. There is a place. The Overlook. The one where we used to fly kites. Do you remember?" "Windy Point?" I asked. "The cliff outside of town?" "Yes. Meet me there. Tonight. At midnight. Come alone. If I see another car, I will run. I can't risk them finding me." "Dad, this sounds—" "Please, Lillian," he begged. His voice cracked. "I just want to see you. I want to explain. Before whatever happens next happens." I looked at Julian. He was shaking his head vigorously. "No," he mouthed. "It's a trap. I will be there. Dad," I said. "I love you. Bean," he said, using the nickname he hadn't used since I was 10. The line went dead. I looked at Julian. "You are not going," he said. "Lillian, that is insane. Meet him alone at a cliff at midnight? That sounds like the setup for a murder. I have to go." He said, "Don't trust anyone." Julian argued. "That includes me? He is scared. Julian, he is on the run. Or someone is holding a gun to his head and making him read a script." Julian said, "Think about it. Why would he want you alone?" "So you are vulnerable." I thought about the voice, the hoarseness, the nickname. "Bean." He used the nickname. I said, "He hasn't called me that in 20 years. It is a signal." "A signal of what? That it is really him, or that he is saying goodbye?" I went to the closet and grabbed my coat. "I am coming with you." Julian said, "No." I said, "He said alone. If he sees your car, he will run. I can't lose him again. I will hide in the trunk," Julian said. "I will follow you at a distance. I don't care. You are not going to a dark cliff alone to meet a man who has been missing for 3 days and is being hunted by a legal cartel." I looked at my husband. He was terrified, but he was solid. He was the only real thing in my life. "Okay," I said, "you follow me. But stay back, way back. If you see me flash my headlights 3 times, you come. Otherwise, you stay dark." Julian nodded. I checked my phone. It was 11:30. I walked out of the inn, the salt air stinging my face. I was going to the edge of the cliff. I was going to look into the face of the man who raised me and find out if he was my father or my architect. The dashboard clock read 11:58 when I turned off the main highway and onto the winding service road that led to Windy Point. The fog had returned, thicker than before, rolling off the Atlantic in heavy, suffocating waves that swallowed the headlights. I was not alone, but I felt singular. Julian was 3 miles back, driving a rental car we had picked up an hour ago so his plates would not be recognized. My phone was broadcasting my location to him, to Cassandra, and to the cloud. I had a canister of pepper spray in my pocket, but my real weapon was the knowledge that I was no longer the person they thought they were hunting. I was not Lillian Adams, the obedient daughter. I was Lillian Vance, the woman who had broken into a storage unit and read the autopsy of her own childhood. I reached the top of the overlook. It was a gravel patch carved out of the tree line, offering a view of the ocean that tonight was just a wall of black void. I saw a single car parked near the edge. It was my father's silver sedan. I pulled up about 20 feet away and killed the engine. I waited. I watched the sedan. The windows were dark. No movement. I flashed my headlights once. Nothing. I opened my door and stepped out. The wind hit me instantly, biting and cold, carrying the sound of waves crashing against the rocks hundreds of feet below. "Dad," I called out. The wind tore the word away. I walked toward the sedan. My boots crunched loudly on the gravel. I kept one hand in my pocket, gripping the pepper spray. I reached the driver's side window. I peered in. Empty. I checked the back seat. Empty. I placed my hand on the hood. It was warm. Not hot, but warm. The heat was fading, but it was there, vibrating against my palm. He had been here minutes ago. I looked around. The woods pressed in on three sides, dense and impenetrable. "Dad?" I shouted again. My phone buzzed in my other pocket. I pulled it out. The screen was blinding in the darkness. It was a text from the unknown number, the same one that had told me to ask about Graybridge, the same one that had led me to the storage unit. "Turn around. You are walking into the part they did not seal." I froze. "Turn around." I spun on my heel, facing the road I had just driven up. I expected to see headlights. I expected to see the black van, but there was nothing. Just the fog swirling in the red glow of my taillights. The part they did not seal. The cliff. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The car was parked at the edge. The engine was warm. He wasn't in the car. He was going to jump? No, that was too simple. I looked at the text again. Turn around. It didn't mean turn around and look at the road. It meant turn around and leave. It meant you are at the wrong place. Or it meant you are walking into a trap. I ran back to my car. I locked the doors. I texted Julian. He is not here. Car is empty. Then another text came through from the unknown number. The diner at the junction. The bathroom hallway. Go, now. The junction was 2 miles back down the hill. There was a 24-hour truck stop there, a place called Sal's that smelled of diesel and burnt coffee. I threw the car into reverse, gravel spraying, and drove down the mountain faster than was safe. I didn't care about the fog. I cared about the warm engine and the silence at the top of the cliff. I pulled into the diner parking lot. It was bathed in harsh, flickering sodium lights. There were 3 semi-trucks idling in the back, but the customer lot was mostly empty. I parked and ran inside. The diner was quiet. A waitress with tired eyes was wiping down the counter. A couple of truckers were eating silently in a booth. I didn't stop to ask for a table. I walked straight past the register, toward the sign in the back that read restrooms. The hallway was narrow, painted appealing beige. The light overhead buzzed like a dying fly. At the end of the hall, near the payphone that no one used anymore, a man was standing. He was leaning against the wall, his forehead resting against the cool plaster, his eyes closed. He wore a gray suit that was wrinkled and stained. He looked like he had aged 20 years in 3 days. "Dad?" I whispered. Graham Adams opened his eyes. He looked at me, and for a second, I didn't see the titan of industry, the pillar of the community, or the man who had bought me my first car. I saw a ruin. He was pale, his skin possessing a translucent, waxen quality. He had lost weight. His collar hung loose around his neck. "Lillian." He breathed. "You came." He pushed himself off the wall and took a step toward me, reaching out his hands. I stepped back. I didn't mean to do it. It was instinct. I couldn't let him touch me. Not yet. Not when I knew that his hands had signed the papers that erased my mother. He saw the flinch. He stopped. His hands dropped to his sides. "I am sorry," he said. His voice was a wreck, scraping against the silence of the hallway. "I am so sorry." "Bean, why are you here?" I asked. "Why is your car at the overlook?" "It is a decoy," he said. He glanced nervously toward the dining room. "They track the GPS in the car. They track the phone. I left the phone in the glove box. I walked down the trail through the woods. It took me an hour. I needed them to think that I was ending it." "Ending it?" "It is the only way out of the contract." "Lillian," he said, "death. That is the only termination clause they accept." "Who are they?" I asked. "And do not tell me it is the family trust. A trust is a piece of paper." "Who is the person?" He looked at the floor. "It is not one person. It is the firm, Marrow and Finch. But they answer to the board, and the board is... It is your mother. It is my father's old partners. It is a machine." Lillian, a machine designed to keep the money clean. So you missed my wedding to keep the money clean? I missed your wedding to keep you safe, he hissed. He looked up, his eyes wild. Do you know what they were going to do? They were going to raid the ceremony. They were going to serve you with subpoenas at the altar. They were going to freeze your assets. Julian's assets. Everything. They told me that if I showed up, if I legitimized you publicly, they would release the file on Cassandra. I found the file on Cassandra. I said, I met her. Graham went still. You met her? Yes, yesterday. She told me everything. He slumped against the wall, sliding down until he was crouching on the dirty tile. He put his head in his hands. Then you know, he whispered. You know I am a coward. I know you made a deal. I said, I stood over him, judging him, loving him, hating him. I know you traded her for me. I traded my life for yours, he said, his voice muffled by his hands. They were going to destroy her, Lillian. They were going to plant drugs in her apartment. They were going to have her arrested. You would have gone to foster care. I couldn't let that happen. I had to buy you. The price was erasing her. And erasing my age? I asked. Erasing 5 years of my life? We had to make the timeline fit Elise, he said. We had to make you legitimate in the eyes of the trust. If you were born before the marriage, you were excluded from the inheritance. Elise came up with the plan. She said we could just adjust the records. She had connections. It is monstrous. I said, it was survival. He pleaded. He looked up at me. I have loved you every day of your life. Lillian, every single day. I stayed in that house. I stayed in that marriage. I swallowed every lie. Just so I could be near you. Just so I could make sure you were safe. I looked at him. I saw the pathetic truth of it. He believed he was a martyr. He believed that his silence was a form of love. I have one question. I said, and I need you to answer it without thinking about the firm, or the money, or Mom. He nodded. Anything. Was I ever your choice? I asked. Or was I just the baggage you had to smuggle through customs? He looked at me. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He hesitated. It was only for a second. Maybe 2. He was searching for the right words, the precise words, the words that would absolve him. But the hesitation was the answer. If you have to think about whether you chose your daughter, you didn't. The silence stretched between us, thin and sharp as a wire. I chose to be your father. He said finally, that is not what I asked. I said. Before he could answer, the door at the end of the hallway opened. The air in the hallway changed. It went from the stale warmth of the diner to something colder, sharper. A man walked in. He was unremarkable. He wore a beige trench coat over a dark suit. He was clean-shaven, with glasses that reflected the fluorescent light. He looked like an accountant or a mid-level bureaucrat. He walked down the hallway with a calm, steady gait. He didn't look at me. He looked at my father, who was still crouching on the floor. Mr. Adams, the man said. His voice was pleasant, professional. We were worried. The car at the overlook, it was a dramatic touch. My father scrambled to his feet. He looked terrified. He pressed his back against the wall. Mr. Sterling, he said. I was just getting coffee. Mr. Sterling smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Of course. But the car. Graham, you know the policy on unsecured assets. And leaving your phone? That is a breach of the communication protocol. Who are you? I asked. Mr. Sterling turned his head slowly to look at me. He adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Vance, he said. Congratulations on your nuptials. A pity about the attendance. We tried to minimize the disruption. You are the one who sent the letter. I said, you are the one who spoofed the numbers. I am a consultant, he said. I help families manage complex logistical challenges. He turned back to my father. The board is very disappointed. Graham, the agreement was clear. No contact with the first party, no deviation from the narrative, and certainly no midnight meetings with the beneficiary to discuss sealed matters. I am not a beneficiary. I said, stepping between them. I am his daughter. Mr. Sterling looked at me with mild amusement. You are an asset, Mrs. Vance. A very expensive, very well-curated asset. Your entire life, your education, your comfort. It was all funded by the terms of the agreement your father signed. You are the product of the contract. He reached into his pocket. My hand went to the pepper spray. He pulled out a phone. The car is outside. Graham, he said, we need to debrief. There are restructuring documents to sign. To ensure that Mrs. Vance's husband doesn't experience any sudden career difficulties. It was a threat, a polite, corporate threat against Julian. My father looked at me. He looked at Mr. Sterling, I have to go. Lillian, he said. His voice was dead. No, I said. I grabbed my father's arm. You do not have to go anywhere. We can walk out of here. Julian is outside. We can go to the police. We can go to the press. Mr. Sterling laughed softly. The police? Graham, explain to your daughter what happens if the police open the file on the '89 incident. My father flinched. He pulled his arm away from me. I can't. Lillian, he whispered. I can't let you see what is in that file. I don't care what is in the file, I shouted. I don't care if you killed someone. I care that you are a slave to these people. He looked at me with tears streaming down his face. I am doing this for you, he said. No, you are not. I said, you are doing it because you are afraid. Graham looked at Mr. Sterling. I am coming. He started to walk away. He started to walk toward the man who owned him. I felt a cracking sound in my chest. It was the sound of the last hope breaking, the hope that my father was a hero in disguise. He wasn't. He was just a man who had sold his soul on an installment plan and was terrified of the final payment. Dad, I said. He stopped. But he didn't turn around. If you walk out that door with him, I said, my voice steady and cold, you are dead to me. Not missing, not estranged, dead. I will go to the courthouse tomorrow and I will file a petition to legally change my name. I will erase the name Adams from my life just like you erased Cassandra from yours. He trembled, his shoulders shook, and I continued, I am going to write the story. I am going to write everything. The storage unit, the false age, the blackmail. I will post it online. I will send it to every paper in the state. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the scandal. I will burn the family name to the ground. Mr. Sterling stopped smiling. Mrs. Vance, that would be inadvisable. The legal repercussions. I looked at Mr. Sterling. Sue me. I said, I have nothing you can take. I have no family. I have no inheritance that I want. And I have the truth. I turned back to my father. Graham. I said, not Dad. Graham. I am not keeping your secret anymore. I said, you have 10 seconds to decide if you are a father or an asset. 1. He stood there. 2. Mr. Sterling took a step toward him. Graham. The car. 3. My father looked at the door. He looked at the safety of the cage. He looked at the comfort of the lie. Then he looked at me. He saw the woman I had become. The woman who had stood alone at the altar. The woman who had broken into a storage unit. The woman who was stronger than he had ever been. 4. He flinched. It was a physical spasm, as if the honesty of the moment was a bright light hurting his eyes. He looked at Mr. Sterling. No, my father said. It was a whisper. Mr. Sterling blinked. Excuse me? No, my father said louder. He turned to face him. I am not getting in the car. Graham, think about the consequences. I am thinking about them, my father said. He looked at me. I am thinking that I have already lost the only thing that mattered. He walked back toward me. He didn't touch me. He stood next to me. I am not going, he said to Sterling, and neither is she. Mr. Sterling stared at us for a long moment. The silence was heavy, thick with the potential for violence. But we were in a public diner. There were witnesses, and Mr. Sterling was a man of shadows, not scenes. Very well, Mr. Sterling said. He put his phone away. You will be hearing from the firm by morning. Expect the foreclosure notice by noon. He turned and walked away. The door swung shut behind him. My father let out a breath that sounded like a sob. His knees gave way, and he slumped against the wall again. They will take everything. Lillian, he said, the house, the pension, the savings. I will be destitute. Good, I said. I slid down the wall to sit next to him. The floor was dirty, the light was buzzing, but for the first time in 3 days, the air felt breathable. We will be poor, I said, but we will be real. He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. Did I lose you? He asked. I looked at the man who had raised me, the man who had lied to me, the man who had just risked everything to stand beside me. You lost the daughter who believed the lie. I said, you have to get to know the one who knows the truth. I pulled my phone out. I texted Julian, come get us. I looked at my father. And we are picking up Mom on the way. I said, Elise? He asked, confused. No. I said, Cassandra? My father flinched again, but then, slowly, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. It was a terrified smile, but it was honest. Okay. Bean, he said. Okay. We sat on the floor of the diner hallway, waiting for my husband, waiting for the lawsuits, waiting for the end of the world we knew. And as I took my father's hand, I realized that the empty chairs at my wedding hadn't been a tragedy. They had been a renovation. I had cleared the room of the people who didn't matter, so that the people who did could finally find their seats. Thank you for listening to On My Wedding Day, Not a Single Family Member Showed Up, not even my father who raised me. This story explored the deep, painful cost of family secrets and the courage it takes to break the cycle of silence. I would love to know where you are listening from. Please leave a comment below with your city or country. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel for more emotional, realistic dramas. And tell me in the comments, do you think Lillian made the right choice by choosing the hard truth over a comfortable lie? I look forward to reading your thoughts.